Welcome to the vodcast for Family Promise of Spokane. Our intent here is to use these to train and equip our volunteers and encourage and thank you for the good work that you're doing in Family Promise. I'd like to introduce my co-host, Steve.
Yeah, hello.
Tell us
Thank you.
about yourself.
Well, I'm super excited to be here. 3 years into being executive director of Family Promise, I finally feel like I'm beginning to know what I know and I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot more of the I don't know stuff, but do know one thing is that without volunteers, there is no Family Promise.
Preach.
We're better to start than on a national level to really be able to give people a perspective that they really are a part of something bigger than themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Today we're interviewing Claas Ehlers. He's the president of Family Promise nationwide. It's a really fun interview. Brilliant guy who has this master plan for where Family Promise is going this year, and so check it out.
Yeah, I mean, I can believe all the stuff. I mean, it's just like, president of this huge organization, and yet he's so approachable and honest and passionate, and he volunteers. I mean, he's just a really cool guy, and I'm super excited for this interview. I think you'll be encouraged.
Yeah.
And I think not just you, but civic people and businesses, and I think this is an interview that people have got to hear to really get a vision for what we're really doing nationwide at Family Promise. So
absolutely, let's roll the tape.
Hey, thanks so much for taking some time with us. As I was sharing a little bit earlier, we were kind of doing this kind of a 12-week kind of a training for our volunteers, helping them kind of get a vision of what Family Promise is and how they can serve and get the most out of their volunteering. And we thought, what better way to start the podcast blogs than with an interview with the president, who's not only a president but also a volunteer. And so I'd love to hear a little more about kind of how you got into Family Promise and how you got involved, and why are you so passionate about Family Promise?
Sure thing. So it's interesting. I got started at Family Promise in 2002. And I won't kind of go through the whole long, complex story, but the short of it is that the congregation I belonged to at that time wasn't really very much involved with the program at all. So I knew very little of it, but there was an opportunity that became available here. I'd been working in the corporate sector. I'd been working business development for software firms. And the company I worked for was located about 20 blocks from Ground Zero in Manhattan. And our plan was, it was a small startup, was we were going to get bought by a larger company and be able to cash in our stock options, work for the new company. And we had a deal on the table September 3rd of 2001 to get bought by that larger company. What happened, fortunately, I was not in the city on September 11th, so that was a great blessing. But immediately afterwards, if you think about it, everybody thought we were going into a recession. There was not going to be any hiring. So a software that helped you hire was no longer attractive. And so instead of wanting to buy the company, the industry basically said, well, we know how much capital you have. You'll run out of money, and we'll let you, we'll let you go out of business and buy the rights to the software. So I knew I had to find another job. And my wife said to me, because I started looking around, she said, that's not what you really want to do. You want to do something that speaks to your heart. So I started looking. I thought maybe I worked for a university. I could go teach at a college, because I'd been doing some teaching as an adjunct. I loved doing that. But I looked around, and here was this thing, Family Promise. It was just about 8 minutes from my home. I knew only a little bit about it, but I come in to interview for a job there, and I left that interview, and these were the two factors that came into play. By the time I was 5 years old, I'd lived in 7 different homes, and I'd spent a year in foster care. So I totally connected to the idea of stability for children. The other side of it is that my great-great-grandparents were Catholics, Lutherans, Jews, and Muslims. So if interfaith relations didn't exist, I wouldn't exist. Wow. And I said, wow, this is where I feel called to be. This speaks to me on so many levels. And my wife said, we can make half as much money. We can make it. Let's do this. And I joined Family Promise then.
Wow.
These churches a couple of years later for a church that was heavily involved with the program. And it has defined our lives since then. And I could not be more thrilled to be with this organization. I have met amazing people all across the country. I have seen, since I started, hundreds of thousands of children and adults go back into self-sufficiency because of Family Promise. It is a tremendous blessing to be here.
Wow. And you still stay overnight every quarter, don't you? At least I know I heard a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, I do. Yeah, it's I've driven the van. In fact, I just last night was over at Central Presbyterian Church in Summit, helping them out for for the evening time. Yes, and I have slept in a lot of churches and synagogues, and not during the sermons.
But I appreciate that about you, because I think on some levels you can kind of be on a level above it all, but to continue to walk in that and keep it fresh and keep it personal is really cool.
Yeah, it has that professional aspect to it. Certainly, I think anybody, if you're with an organization, you need to be able and willing to do the core elements. If you work for Coca-Cola, you really have to drink Coke.
Right.
You have to know what it tastes like and so on. But just on a personal level, it's an amazing ministry. Why wouldn't I want to volunteer? And it's kind of fun for me because I have volunteered in probably 15 different congregations. It's really cool to see how it works in different congregations and just see, and one of the amazing things that you see with Family Promise, and your volunteers, I'm sure, can speak to this, is that it really starts to define a church. I know my church, St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in Melbourne, which started with the program in 1987. Now, I joined that church in about 2005. It is in their DNA. It influences everything they do. And you can see that with congregations, how this program is not just one more ministry they do, one more outreach, but something that defines how they look at things. You see congregations that do food pantries. And after they get involved with Family Promise, they say, wait a second, we need to do this differently. We need to offer vouchers and let people shop for themselves as opposed to giving them bags of goods. They get that understanding that we are all brothers and sisters. We are blessed by God. We are called by God to share those blessings. None of us is in a position of judgment. We share what we have. That's what hospitality means. And I think that hospitality is so much the core of what we do.
You talked about, that Family Promise has so many affiliates around the country. Have you been able to visit some of those ones, outside of the Northeast? And what have you found that's different in places? And what have you found that really is the same wherever you go? I mean, what are the big themes that you see?
Good question, John. I've been to probably about 195 out of the 202 affiliates.
Pretty good.
I've been to Spokane since you've been there, Steve. That's the problem with having regional directors. There's less reason for me to go places than there used to be. And also, you don't ever cause any trouble, so I never have to come out there. But back to your question, John, and now let's see if I can remember your question.
Just visiting, and what are you seeing that's different? What are you seeing, the same themes?
So it is interesting. You have differences. You have regional differences with different congregations. For example, if you're in Hawaii, they're going to serve you rice for breakfast. If you're in North Carolina, they're going to serve grits. If you're up here, you're going to serve bagels. In New Jersey, so you have those differences. But there's really not much more beyond that, because the reason that Family Promise is in 42 states, the reason that it is in Spokane, but it's in Albuquerque, it's in White County, Georgia, which is 25,000 people. It's in Rochester, New York, which is a Rust Belt city. The reason it's in all these communities is because everywhere there are, unfortunately, children and families experiencing homelessness. But everywhere there are people of faith with buildings. There are facilities that can serve as day centers. There's ways to get transportation. There's social service agencies who want to connect. And there are people who have it on their heart to help their brothers and sisters in need in the ways that Family Promise allows them to do that. We always say anybody can be involved with Family Promise because your qualifications are, can you either eat, sleep, or talk? You don't have to do all three of those. But if you do one of those, you're qualified.
You're qualified. You're in.
Yeah. And even if you're a curmudgeon, you can still volunteer because you can bring the milk or set up the beds. You don't even have to see people. So there's an amazing universality. Now, there's different factors. There's different demographics. Certainly in some communities, like Grand Rapids, which does a fantastic job, Cincinnati, they're able to get families out of the program typically in 4 or 5 weeks, which is amazing and wonderful and what you want to see happen. In suburban New Jersey and suburban Massachusetts, in Cobb County, Georgia, and some of the suburban communities where the cost of living is so high, it's several months. You see those differences. But in terms of the actual nature of the program, it is surprisingly consistent from location to location.
Well, Well, I did it. I took a trip with my daughter from Austin, Texas, all the way back to Spokane this last year. We had got a car for her and brought it down. I was able to visit 5 different family promises along the way. Oh my goodness, what an experience of just seeing so many cool things that literally I could just take from there and kind of implement into Spokane. But it is inspiring to really feel like you're not alone. You're part of this small part of the puzzle of something much bigger going on around America and making a huge difference. So it's pretty exciting. I can see why you can get so passionate about it, because you're seeing it everywhere you go. Even though it looks different, it's still the same result. Children and their parents getting back into homes, which is a beautiful thing.
And the other side of it too is, we're changing the lives of the children and the families that come through this program. But I always say this, we're changing the lives of children, but it is not just the children in the program. We are changing the lives of the children who do the volunteering, who can learn that you get the commonality. They are blessed to be where they are. That is a luck of birth that they are where they are, and that they can actually have an impact. And that impact is relational. I mean, it's great. We, of course, always love people writing checks. Nobody ever minds people writing checks. And it's great to do things to build homes. All these things are great. But just relating to people, just being the person you are with another person and sharing that fellowship, sharing a meal. I mean, just last night when I was at Central Presbyterian Church, I was with a friend who has 2 daughters, and there was a whole bunch of kids, and we got sitting down, and one of her daughters is 9 years old. One of the daughters in the program the girls in the program is 9 years old. We got talking. We identified whose birthday came first, which one was older. Just the things that kids do.
Yeah.
And that was that volunteer's first experience that she knew of relating to people experiencing homelessness. And it was nothing like what she would see on TV, nothing like what's drilled into our heads. It's just 2 girls with a lot in common.
Yeah. Yeah, we believe really strongly in mentoring and aftercare, and I'm not just saying that because that's my role. But we've kind of job security here. We've kind of expanded into now we're opening a 24/7 open doors shelter kind of crisis relief thing, funneling to our interfaith hospitality center, and then funneling out from there into aftercare and mentoring. You talk about just the relational aspect of spending time with people, sharing a meal with people, specifically in terms of aftercare and mentoring. How do you see that playing out on a regional level and on a national level?
Yeah, so it's a terrific question. And graduate support services, which is the term I like to use, just because it's focusing on who the families are. Is such a key component. So I'm going to do a couple of touches on that, because you asked the question has a few different nuances. You already can figure out that I'll answer a question way more than it needs to be answered. So
Go for it, man.
It is such a critical component because people are on a continuum, and their homelessness doesn't end just because they've gotten to housing. That community aspect, that relational aspect that we have, it needs to continue. It needs to continue on a professional level where we can provide different kinds of case management support. But that mentoring, that engagement of the community of volunteers is critically important as well, too. And I think you asked about sort of trending around that. What we see around the country is how important affiliates understand that is, and how important we tell them that it is, because we believe this is critically important, too, that you need to be engaging people after graduation. You need to be engaging people who aren't even going to come into the program. Finding additional ways, because we have our challenges, certainly as a program, as a model. You guys know that. But our strength is that volunteer pool, our ability to engage the community. And so every way that we can use that community engagement to support more services for people, primarily children and families experiencing homelessness, the better. So what I love about the graduate support services and the things that you see happening is we have the financial literacy program. So you can bring in volunteers, right, to work on that. One thing that we're doing a lot of, and we're starting to work on creating a national curriculum for, is good tenant training. There's some good materials around that, but we want to work that in the Family Promise model, because this works on a couple different levels. If you work with a realtor, people love to train what they're good at. So if you get a realtor coming in and training people on good tenant practices, they like that. They really like that. You're adding to your workforce, so it's not you, John, having to do everything. You can bring in other people to do that. Those people are getting satisfaction. You're building relationships. And if you're starting to build relationships with realtors, sure, they'll sponsor you at your golf event and so on. But they'll also say, well, what's our job? Our job is to put people in homes. Your job is to put people in homes.
Yeah.
How do we do that together? How do we form partnerships so that we are starting to create more opportunities? How do we help landlords overlook evictions?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is such a big issue. We all know families who got evicted often for reasons that had nothing to do with any delinquency on their part.
So true.
And they're permanently tarred with that. And they're great. They're working hard. They've got us backing them up. They're terrific tenants, but they won't even get a chance because of that. So that mentorship is not just with the families. It's that rising tide that lifts all boats.
Yeah. Awesome.
Absolutely. We have that situation right now, a family of 4, one on the way, husband, wife, great people. They just had an eviction situation happen. And thankfully, a landlord overlooking that eviction right now, giving them a second chance. They've been turned down so many times before they came into our program. And because we're advocating for them and working with them, able to help them, the landlord's giving them a shot. And we're super excited about that. So we totally understand that.
Yep. Yeah. And that's where and this goes to another, and I know you might ask this question, but so I'll answer it ahead of time. But one of the key aspects of the future is, realistically for Family Promise, the congregational base will always be the core. But you don't have to talk to too many clergy leaders to find out that that's not a growing demographic. Younger people are less religious. Overall, people are less religious. The congregations will always be there, but we do need to figure out, how do we start to bring in some other groups with affinities? A realtors association has an affinity. A college frat has an affinity. A civic group has an affinity. We need to gauge more and more of those, because it augments our core strength of our congregations, but it also opens up so many more opportunities.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, I think that's exactly when people are looking for opportunities. People are compassionate. They want to give.
Absolutely.
And more than just kind of a meal step through here, but I want to sit down and engage and have a conversation and learn. And I was thinking about that earlier. We were talking about bringing your kids to be a part of something like this. Now that we've been around almost 20 years now, we've seen kids that have been from a young age every quarter going to serve a meal, and now they're in college or growing up. We had one who even did a senior project on what it means to be a volunteer at Family Promise and sharing about that experience. So it really is formational as a parent, as a church. And so that's why I love. I'm really excited about Family Promise. Yeah. Well, actually, you made a big change. You came into Family Promise, and then you were recently promoted. You have some big shoes to fill.
Sure. Yeah.
Tell us about that transition and what that means for you and for Family Promise, and what are some of your visions and dreams, and where are we going?
Yeah. So Karen founded the organization, founded it as an ad hoc effort to address the impetus for Family Promise was that the Division of Youth and Family Services in New Jersey in 1986 was placing children in foster care because they'd become homeless.
Right.
That was sort of the spark. And Karen built a coalition to deal with that. Then other communities said, gee, we could do this too. And that's how Family Promise came about. And Karen, incredible leader, incredible visionary, incredible mentor, decided to step down last year and stepped down in January of this year. And I took over. And it has been an incredibly productive transition because, if you're following a legend, right, it's not easy. And somebody who, through force of will, went from we have a problem to 700,000 people have been served, 180,000 people volunteering across the country, right? That's an enormous distance to have spanned. And it's incredible that one person could have driven that.
Right.
But she's been fantastic. We meet frequently. We talk all the time. She gives me guidance, advice, but never says, well, you really should do it this way or do it that way. I could not ask for a better transition. And I think in terms of the vision for the future, so I touched on one element, which is we've got to continue to bring in more groups into Family Promise. And again, not just because, our Presbyterian church had 60 people at worship, has 50 this year. Part of it, but it's just to bring in that additional talent and that additional advocacy. I mean, people in the business community, nobody wants to see families homeless. So the more people you clue into it, the more people are invested in making changes that help address the causes of family homelessness. That's one aspect. I think another area too is, and I think a lot of affiliates are doing this, that we really look for every possible way to serve families. So if we diversify our programming, if we are willing to accept more marks against the family coming in, because we can always have families leave the program if it's not going to work out. But I really would like to see us collectively trying to serve more families, and more families with some difficult issues. Obviously, nothing that compromises the program itself, but I think it is important that we figure out how can we touch as many families as possible, whether it's in our program or whether it's through what you guys have done, creating some additional programming that can help address the needs of those families.
Yeah.
The third area is critically important. I'm going to a conference in a couple of weeks that's going to work on this. So we have what we think is a wonderful financial literacy program, but its big shortfall is it's on paper. Now, if you've got a mom in 5 years, when you've got a mom comes in who is 20 years old, she'll been on this for most of her life. So the solutions we want to provide have to be connected to this. It has to be connected to technology. So we've got to continue to think about how do we engage technology towards our solutions. So that's another one of our key priorities. And I think kind of going back to some of the previous points, just how do we deepen some of the services that we provide? How do we continue with our core ethos, which is hospitality, compassion, relational ministry, but also being cost effective by utilizing existing resources. I never want to see us get into the business where we are building large buildings to provide social services. I love the fact that our day centers are in a parish house owned by a church, or in this building or that building, and that we are utilizing space already there in the congregations to do the shelter.
That's awesome.
We got to stay there, but we do have to continue to think, how do we take that ethos of utilizing existing resources to continue to address? And that's what I'm talking about, like these realtors. That's an existing resource. If we can get them teaching people how to be good tenants and making connections and being a bridge to landlords, that's all existing resources.
Wow.
Yeah. And we have them, and the people want to help.
Yeah, I do. I appreciate that. I mean, Karen Olson, obviously a legend, and we're really excited to have her out here May 11th for our 20th anniversary celebration gala, kind of sharing the vision of how she got to where we are, and not only that, but she's also going to be visiting some of the other location affiliates around. But also, just really appreciate you, Claas, and been learning a lot just by listening, and excited to kind of follow your lead and see what the next generation, the next step is going to be for us. So anyway.
Well, and I'll make just two additional points off of that. It's really important for us here at Family Promise that we continue to identify ways to build more capacity in our affiliates. And you've seen that with the financial literacy program. We're working on a micro enterprise program so that we can get families able to start creating their own businesses. And that's not just about business, it's really workforce development. Because if you take an entrepreneur class and it's not for you, you're still going to be a better employee.
Yeah.
Anybody who thinks like an entrepreneur is a better employee.
Absolutely.
So and we're doing the regional meetings. We have a national conference, the webinars. We try to do as much as we can to help support affiliates. We've gotten a whole bunch of nonprofit partnerships, right? We're doing stuff with Habitat on Neighborhood Revitalization. We're working with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. We're working with HomeAid. I'm actually talking to an organization that provides meals from restaurants. I'm working with a lot of different things just to try to help support affiliates. But I want to say that what you affiliates do, it's a circle. So we're trying to help provide resources for affiliates. But I mean, Steve, you've come up with some amazing things. So many affiliates come up with these brilliant innovations. It's so wonderful that can bubble back up, and then we can share those. We can disseminate them. And the last thing I just wanted to say is thank you so much to the tremendous people in Spokane. You've probably had close to 10,000 different people volunteer over the years at Spokane, right?
Yeah.
It's not an insignificant percentage of that population. And it is tremendous. It's amazing what people who only have a dream and a good recipe for lasagna can do.
Yeah, right.
I don't know about you, John, but with this current state of politics right now, I think you might be a fourth run-in there. I might be voting for President Claas to be the president of our United States. I think we do a lot better if we had you there.
Well, it might be easier to be that president. This presidency.
Love it.
That's true. Well, anything else, John?
No, I appreciate your time, Claas. The goal here is to equip, empower, and encourage our volunteers, and I think what you've shared today will be really helpful with that.
And thank you to your volunteers so much. It always moves me tremendously. Every time I meet volunteers, and I'll meet them sometimes on an airplane and talking to people, and we find out that we're both volunteers.
Yeah.
It is tremendously moving when I think about what they all do. And so I cannot offer enough heartfelt thanks to your volunteers. But you guys are pretty awesome too.
Well, thank you so much to you and everyone out there. And wow.
Yeah, my goodness. That was a lot of fun.
I pride myself kind of knowing what's going on, and I'm kind of obviously a director. I hear a lot of these things and see the emails, but to see his passion and to hear from him, I feel like we're ready to go out and do it again.
Yeah, I think what's really cool is to take what's happening on the individual level, where every grandma that brings a lasagna, every child that comes to serve a meal, and then extrapolating that to what did he say? 100,000 volunteers in the
42 states, 202 affiliates.
I mean, that's just a lot of good work happening, and it goes both ways, from the micro to the macro. It's just was very cool
really cool. Well, I don't know if people know this, but if Family Promise volunteers were actually employees, we'd be the 36th biggest organization, business, not nonprofit, but business in America.
That's crazy.
We're right ahead of Starbucks and behind Disneyland or something like that. So it's pretty exciting what small groups of people can do over time and making a legit, substantial difference in the world.
Yeah, and I love what he was talking about, just with drawing volunteers, not even out of churches, but out of the private sector, and going really wherever you are. We've got this common desire to see, like, nobody wants to see a kid that doesn't have a home.
Right.
And so I think with volunteers coming out of churches, the pathway is pretty well established. Like, come serve a meal with your church, you kind of stick with your group of people. But for those coming out of, that just have heard of what we do and want to get involved, I think we want to establish a pathway for people that we can, through our volunteer coordinator or something, that we get their contact, we get in touch with them, we find out how they can, serve and contribute, and then just plug them in and help grease the skids a little bit.
Well, and that wasn't planned actually, but that's the perfect segue into sharing about our new website, familypromisespokane.org, where we actually do have 2 pathways.
Yeah.
For an individual, you click a button and it kind of takes you through this little journey of ways you want to serve and how you can help and skills and gifts you have.
Yeah.
And then actually for a group, which I love what Claas said about, was not just churches serving, but churches being the location.
Yeah.
But bringing in groups. Like this upcoming week, we have Junior League, and they're going to be actually serving meals at 3 different churches.
Awesome.
So I'm super excited about that partnership and an ability to help civic-minded groups, universities.
Yeah.
Whatever, right? Coming in and saying,
realtors,
how can we,
and chiropractors, and electricians,
come in together and help be a part of what we're doing. And so, lots of fun things to look forward to. And today's actually a great day for us. We're pretty on fire because one of our single moms and her 8-year-old daughter is moving into a house, apartment, like today.
Yeah.
And we're fired up.
It's been with this particular family. We've had churches, I think maybe even our whole rotation of churches has invested in her and loved her and her daughter, and it's just so cool. We pass them on the stairs coming up here, and she's going, got my place, going now to fill it up with furniture, and man, what a blessing.
Yeah, so I mean, just floating, goosebumps, the whole bit.
Yeah.
And so like Claas says, I also want to say thank you. The volunteers, you are making a difference in lives, and I've said this a lot, but it really is like a puzzle. This family came in about 12 weeks ago, and their whole life was jumbled, and there was all these puzzle pieces everywhere. Her future was a haze, and there's no way that she was going to move from here to here. And in those 12 weeks, every meal, right, every night, overnight hospitality, every bit of the puzzle piece. And her life is now beginning to take shape.
Yeah.
She's got a job, right? She's got her kids in school.
Yeah.
And we're helping her through a lot of health challenges she's been going through. And so it takes a village
to raise a family.
It's awesome.
And so glad that we have that here at Family Promise Spokane. So
yeah. Well, stay tuned. We've got 12 episodes of this. So our hope here is to encourage, empower, and train up our volunteers. We want to see you become the support, the hero that these homeless families need, and just empower you in that. So
if they're all this fun, we might be more than 12. We'll see how this thing goes.
It's fun.
All right.
Let's do it.
All right. Until next week.
Signing
Thank
off.
you so much for joining us here. And God bless you, and thank you for all you do.